Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Twitter space today. Today, we're going to be talking about the Worldchain Developer Preview. If you didn't get to see the announcement earlier this week, the Worldcoin Foundation announced the launch of that particular phase of mainnet. And since developers can start building on Worldchain now, we're going to dig into a few things today for more clarity in case you're not familiar with Worldchain or the tech stack that it's built on. So first, we'll talk about Worldchain itself and what makes it unique, like the vision for Worldchain, what distinguishes it from other L2s in the Ethereum environment, which means why would a builder choose to come build on Worldchain? Next, we'll discuss the Optimism Superchain and how Worldchain fits into the overall Superchain vision. And then lastly, we'll kind of look at what's in the works for Worldchain and what's going to happen between now and mainnet launch and what builders can expect looking forward. Like always, we've got a great group of speakers again. And so we'll kick it off with a round of intros to get things going. So Remco, it looks like you're on the call or on the space. You want to give us a brief intro?
Yeah, hi, I'm Remco. Done a couple spaces now, so maybe people know me already, but I'm from the Worldcoin Foundation where I do a lot of the protocol related things.
All right, excellent. Yeah, we have done quite a few of these already together. And then I believe we have Vivian on as well. Vivian, and would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, Stephen. Yes, I am here and I would love to introduce myself. Thanks for inviting me. I oversee partnerships at Optimism Foundation. Super excited to be here. I've been working with the Worldcoin TFH team for some time now, since I believe you guys migrated to OP mainnet and then over the last few months gearing up to Worldchain. Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. And great to have you. Great seeing you this week, by the way. And we have John, I believe, from Safe. John, would you like to give us an intro?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Hi, everyone. John from Safe here. I'm the ecosystem lead for Safe, so anything associated with people building on Safe, I'm generally very interested. Yeah, Worldcoin and Safe have a bit of a history together. We've been building it together since the early days, once Worldcoin was incepted, I would say. And yeah, just generally very excited for Worldchain and really down to have a good conversation today.
Okay, so it seems like Stephen may have run into technical snafus with his connection. I hope he'll be hopping back on soon, but maybe I can push this forward because, yeah, we want to highlight what is Worldchain and why we're doing it and what will it solve and highlight some cool stuff there. So the story behind Worldchain is that it's both a chain out of necessity and a chain out of opportunity. And let me explain that. So the history of Worldcoin and experimenting with chains is actually from the very beginning. Like even the choice for Ethereum wasn't like set in stone from day one. It's like something that was consciously decided on after experimenting even on other chains. We've done a lot of experiments around scaling and L2s. At some point before launch, we were doing the most efficient rollup that I think has been done so far by using the Hubble stack in a modified form. The pre-launch testnet was running on that for a while. It was exciting. Eventually, we came to the conclusion that we need something that is just deeply integrated with the Ethereum ecosystem. The more we develop, the more we realize that the Ethereum ecosystem is thriving and is essentially dominating with the whole DeFi stack and everything built on it. Within that, we find just very close alignment with the OP Superchain vision. Again, because it just reiterated the concept of we need to build together and we need to have foundational layers that others can build upon. So hence the move in this direction. And at launch, we were on OP mainnet, and that's where we are with all the users till today. What we've seen is that we're growing. We've signed up millions and millions of users. And I think in the moment we have more than 5 million monthly active users, made more than, I think, hundreds of millions of transactions in OP mainnet. And it's gotten to the point where we now have long queues of user transactions and basically saturate OP mainnet for, I think, 8 days on end before these queues empty, consuming the majority of the block space there. And this is not sustainable. Clearly, we cannot more than double our user base if we're already occupying more than half the block space. So it's time to get to our own chain and be able to focus more on being able to grow the amount of block space available. Hence hence the choice for like building a world chain, also going deep into the red tech stack and figuring out like, hey, how can we participate and contribute and work together to realize this vision of gigagas. Like we need to get to this point. If we want to get to blockchain that can actually support a good chunk of the world's population, then we need to get much more serious about scaling. And we need to do that on a relatively short time. So hence the choice to work together within the Superchain ecosystem and to focus on like really getting really good execution time and getting to this scale that we need here. Now, that's the necessity part, which by itself, of course, leads to very interesting opportunities. But I think the real opportunity and the real cool thing about WorldChain is that this is going to be a chain that is about the real world, about actual human beings, verified human beings. And you can already see that in just the difference with how I just like the community of Worldcoin users and the fact that you see these real world pictures of impact being made, as opposed to, let's say, generated NFT art. So this distinction between like virtual and real, and I think WorldChain being like the chain of real human beings and real world, and the opportunities that gives us, like for example, how do we create transaction fee mechanisms that cater to the needs of real human beings, which is why we're experimenting with things like, hey, can we make it such that if you verify as a human being, you get priority in getting your transactions included in the block over, let's say, trading bot traffic or so on. So yeah, those are the opportunities that we're exploring. I think, Stephen, you're back. You want to take it from?
I am back, yes. It's sad when you get kicked off your own Twitter space. But anyway, I'm back. So the thing that's most exciting to me about WorldChain is that premise and what makes it unique, that we're looking at creating blockchain for humans, for verified humans, and then all the things we can do around that to create an experience for those verified humans that's not impacted by bots and things of that nature. Yeah. So looking forward to it. Vivian, did you get to talk generally about WorldChain and how you see it? Any additional commentary on this one before we move on?
Yeah, I think you guys summarized it really well. In terms of what's really exciting for the Superchain or Optimism perspective, like one thing I want to double click on is just Remco mentioned Worldcoin really pushing the boundaries of scaling and investing in RETH. And this is something that I think is a mutual vision across Optimism and Worldcoin. You guys joining as core developers of the OP stack, that means that OP Labs and Worldcoin team get to work together and build to continue scaling Ethereum and being on the cutting edge. So I think that's super exciting for us.
Cool. And how about John? How about you? Anything to add before we move on?
Yeah, I think in general, from the safe perspective, like we are value aligned with WorldCoin and WorldChain. Like we believe in self-custodial sovereignty for every human and every verified human. And that I know for a fact that aligns with what WorldCoin aims to do and what you've been doing from the start and what the community's been doing. Yeah, we're in this for the long haul and we want to try to achieve that for each human.
All right, very good. Yeah, so a couple things. There's a lot more detail on what we're going over today. Worldcoin.org/blog. There's a blog post that goes over the WorldChain developer preview kind of in better detail. And then also, because I dropped, I did have kind of a housekeeping note at the beginning. If you have any questions for any of us or about the dev preview or WorldChain at all, or the Optimism, which we're going to talk in detail in a bit about the Superchain, any questions at all about what we're covering today, just drop those in the Twitter thread and we'll get to them at the end. We usually, save a few minutes to answer most of the questions if we don't answer them in line during a topic. Yeah, so let's move on. We're doing really good on time. So I want to jump into, we talked about WorldChain and a bit about the tech stack, a little bit of history, which Remco may have went over when I was off the call. But yeah, we migrated to Optimism mainnet prior to our launch last year in July. We'd previously been on Polygon, so we've been fans of the Optimism ecosystem for a long time now. But everyone may not know it. We've mentioned the term Superchain a couple times. Most everyone's probably familiar with Optimism if you're in the Web3 space. But let's talk a little bit more about that in general. Vivian, you want to just give us the 101 on what is the Superchain and the background?
Yeah, totally. It's interesting because Remco alluded to already that WorldChain was created partly out of necessity, right? World app was outgrowing the block space at OP mainnet, and you guys knew very early on that you would need your own chain. So Optimism, we foreshadowed this need, right? We realized that in order to get to internet level scale, having just one L2, just having OP mainnet is not enough to sustain that, right? So we wanted to allow other teams to use OP Stack, which has always been open source, but to be able to use it in a way where the chains are not fragmented. One of the challenges that we have in the Ethereum space is that there's tons of different L2s from a user and developer perspective. It's not ideal. You have fragmented liquidity. It's not homogeneous block space. Users have a terrible experience. So with the Superchain, the development, the announcement and the growth of that over the last year, the goal of that is really to provide shared horizontally scaled block space that is also interconnected and makes it actually just feel like one big homogeneous chain, right? That's kind of the vision for the Superchain, where early stages, a lot of things to build. I think what's interesting is OP Stack has been open source for so long, and a lot of teams have benefited from using OP Stack. But specifically for Superchain, what defines a participant in the Superchain is really three things. So from a tech perspective, it teams are using the OP Stack. The second is that chain has been contributing revenue back to Optimism Collective. That's either 15% of sequencer profit or 2.5% of sequencer revenue. And then the third, which is very important, is that all of these chains are governed by Optimism, right? And they've committed to something called a law of chains, which is what we view as a working constitution of the Superchain. And this is how, the Superchain as an aggregate is not just, fragmented chains operating on its own. This is one network. We're all in this together and we're all building together. Right? Aside from WorldChain now being officially part of the Superchain, others include ones like Mode, Base, Redstone, Zora, and then of course OP Mainnet, which is going to remain as neutral block space in Optimism and home of Optimism governance.
All right, very good. Yeah, and I mentioned this in the panel the other day, and I've mentioned it actually, I think when we did a Twitter space with Alchemy a few weeks back. But the history and our thought around launching our own roll-up has gone back for quite some time, well ahead of the announcement in April that we were going to do it. In fact, over a year ago, we were already planning and looking at technologies, and that was part of the reason for moving to Optimism. We felt really good about the tech stack, even though at the time we made that decision, I don't even think OP Stack was a term yet. It had floated around externally very much. But yeah, just super excited about, I call it the Superchain thesis, for lack of a better term, but just what it was intended for. The homogeneity of block space, which I'll be forever grateful to Ben Jones for helping me learn how to pronounce that word, by the way. But yeah, just that premise of what you could do, app chains that can work together, not just at a technical level where chains are making improvements and then upstreaming those to other members of the Superchain and even OP Stack proper for that matter, because a lot of the things that we all work on just add value in general to anyone using OP Stack, in particular for the Superchain. But that thesis kind of resonates with us. It's consistent with the Ethereum ethos in general. So super excited about Optimism, the Superchain being a participant there. Yeah, so Remco, why don't you give us, I touched on, I think Philip, and he was not on the space, but had a presentation day kind of about the history of starting in the roll-up space or whatever. You want to walk us through a bit of that?
Sure, yeah. I already covered a little bit of like the prehistory of us experimenting with chains and L2. I think once we decided that, EVM is the future and we need to be on something EVM compatible because we just want to be part of the much broader and thriving DeFi community and bring that to mainstream, bring that to the people, basically. It was very easy to decide on the OP stacks because, as Vivian said, and lots of applause for this, they were very early in realizing that we will have many L2s and we need to design for that future, which resulted in law of chain and superchain. Basically, this replicable model designed around making it easy for teams to spin up their L2s for their use cases, but also to get this level of homogeneity that makes it easy for downstream developers to get not only like an environment that they're familiar with, but get very hard guarantees that this will remain the case, that they can trust all these different chains to be committed to compatibility with Ethereum mainnet and with each other. And I think OP always excelled in being ahead of the curve in seeing the problems that will arise around L2s in a mid to far future horizon and addressing them really early on before before most people hit those problems already. So it's already like this week we had a very great conversation on what it means for these L2s to become interoperable. And this is just a nice example of like how the ecosystem is getting together and collectively build something very powerful that can actually support the scale that we need while building foundations that other people can easily build upon using existing tools.
Okay, excellent summary. And then John, anything to add? Your SAFE is incredibly prominent in the Ethereum ecosystem as a whole, but then also within the Optimism and Superchain. You got anything you want to add in this part before we move on?
Yeah, I would just echo what Remco said, that OP Stack has been ahead of the curve and they've been identifying problems like from a forward-looking perspective, right? Like we're coming at it from a different angle, that we're really focused on the account, and we believe that smart accounts are the future for UX within the EVM and even actually outside the EVM as well. And OP Stack knew that as well at the same time as we did. And even OP Stack has been like making some key updates to its own infrastructure and stack to pre-deploy the safe contracts and pre-deploy the safe infrastructure to these future OP Stack chains and future Superchain chains as well. So yeah, I just have to commend OP for being ahead of the curve there. And yeah, we're super committed to a secure Superchain, and we want safe to be a critical part in that as well. Especially.
All right, excellent. Okay, very good. Look, again, quick reminder, any questions that you might have, just put those in the Twitter thread and we'll get to them at the end. I'm sure we're going to have plenty of time. WorldChain, we talked about Remco. I caught the end of what Remco was saying, and then I added a bit to it. But how did we wind up at WorldChain in the beginning? Why did we assume, or why did we make the decision to launch our own rollup? And it was a multitude of factors. Again, if you checked out the blog post we just put out, which has way more detail, we're currently about 50% of the workload on OP mainnet. So we have a pretty large workload that runs today. And of course, just like every project, we have growth projections. Without some sort of, kind of fundamental change in scalability, that's going to scale linearly, right? Like the transaction profile will stay the same, which means the volume is going to go up. You can see that, there's limited capacity in that sense. But of course, we know that, and we're doing a lot of things. Remco had mentioned RETH earlier. I'll talk a bit more about that in a few minutes. But it's not just that. It's like, raising the gas target for WorldChain and then exploring ways to be able to process transactions faster, but at a high level, we'll leave it at that summary. But just looking at things we can do to get more gas per second. Gas per second, the measure used to be like transactions per second for performance, but really in blockchain space, it's gas per second, because certainly not all transactions are created equal. Like a simple transfer is one gas amount, and something more heavily involved that maybe is like verifying a proof might be an order of magnitude more gas, for example. So it's more gas per second. What can you process at a given time on a chain? So we're looking to get that up, which means our throughput, if you want to use that term, would be higher. So the vision is to have a chain that we can really scale and focus on scalability, but then also one that is tightly integrated with the Worldcoin or the World ID protocol, so that we can distinguish at the protocol level World ID verified transactions. Now, what does that mean for builders that might be considering where do you deploy on a chain? And the great thing about Superchain, again, to plug Optimism, is again that homogeneity. And that means as a builder, you can pick the chain you want to run on. And if you decide, but you didn't really like that chain, then you can move to a different one. There's no lock-in because you have that homogeneous block space. What advantage does what's World ID integrated at a tight level with WorldChain mean? Well, it means if you're doing something with an app, then and you have any need for Sybil resistance, World ID is a great way to do it. But it also means the chain itself and the protocol, the operating environment of the protocol is going to be geared toward prioritization of those kind of transactions. Now, what does that mean? A lot of that's still a research frontier for us, but minimally it means like some kind of like gas allowance, gas subsidy, things of that nature, some sort of priority around transactions in block space. At the point in time, there's contention perhaps. Just a number of things. If you have an app that has a need for Sybil resistance, then WorldChain is probably a good choice for you, but you have a lot of great choices out there. Yeah, before we hop into the very last section, how do you get involved? In the blog post we put out, again, we're announcing a developer preview, which means you can definitely signal your interest in that. We've got a link in there to brief form you fill out, just telling us a bit about your project. That comes straight to us, and then we can be in touch and get you access to the chain. And so we'd love to have as many people helping us during the dev preview as possible. So yeah. And okay, so what's in the works for WorldChain and the Superchain? I want to shift into this for the last few minutes before we get to any questions that might come in. let's see. John, let's start with you this time. So SAFE has been just an incredible partner for the Worldcoin project for a very long time. So this isn't new. We're not just partnering now with Worldchain. But tell us, again, sometimes we get to talking like this, or we meet up at a conference or something, we just talk and we assume everyone listening is kind of knows what we're talking about. But if there happen to be people on the space that don't quite understand where SAFE fits in, what SAFE is, why don't you give us a background on SAFE? And then, you can kind of talk about how we've worked together on the project so far.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, for anybody that doesn't know on the space, so SAFE, the programmable smart account, simply put, to manage digital assets. And yeah, we believe that the EVM and the non-EVM space will not scale without smart accounts, or the UX will not improve, the UX will not improve, and we'll hit a ceiling essentially with our current solutions, these EOA-based solutions, these public-private key pairs. We believe that the inherent logic that you can program within a smart contract, a smart account, is going to unlock so much more things, and is currently actually Worldcoin, for example, have only unlocked some of these UX benefits by using smart accounts. So yeah, overall, we just want to push the adoption of smart accounts. We want builders to build new experiences on top of smart accounts. And we split our products into two built around this SAFE smart account, right? We have SAFE Wallet, which is a user interface that, individuals like Vitalik use to store and manage digital assets, and also teams use it to manage digital assets, since it has implemented this multi-sig, which is like an N of M signing policy. But we offer so much more, because it again, at the end of the day, the account is programmable. You can program the logic you want to it. And that kind of ties me into the second product that we offer, which is SAFE Core. And SAFE Core is our developer stack. It's an API, it's this SDK along with contracts that allow builders to build new experiences on top of the SAFE smart account. And Worldcoin were one of the early identifiers to say, hey, this smart accounts actually offer more than EOAs when you look at functionalities like recovery, or functionalities like new ways to authenticate your account. And Worldcoin identified that early. They also saw that we are value aligned, us being SAFE, in terms of we believe in credible neutrality, we believe in verified humans using self-custodial solutions, and we both believe in security, right? Being meticulous with security, auditing everything you do. And yeah, I think that's where Worldcoin started to adopt using the SAFE smart account. And to this day, World App is the default. World App uses SAFE as the default smart account for the World App solution. And there's over every World App account is a SAFE account. And there's over 5 million active SAFE accounts on OP based on World App, right? And soon that will be being utilized on Worldchain. So I'm excited for the innovation that we'll put out based on our developer stack, and the new innovation that World App as well as Worldchain Builder can unlock with smart accounts and the SAFE smart accounts. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, we'll always be pushing for new innovation with smart accounts, but we'll always stay neutral, right? We want to build, similar to what OP Stack wants to do, is build an interoperable future where you're not locked into one vendor. Builders can choose from a variety of solutions and migrate to a variety of solutions as well. And these solutions talk to each other. And yeah, that's what we want to do. It's what we want to unlock, a new world where every verified human has access to good, secure accounts and solutions. So yeah, we're just excited with what Worldchain can achieve now, and especially what builders can achieve by building on Worldchain, OP, and SAFE together, right? I think there's so much that can be unlocked from a tactical and a user-facing level as well.
Very good. Anything you want to add? Tell us about the new SAFE gas station, by the way?
Yeah, I think ultimately we believe that, again, smart accounts for the future, and we are working new solutions to enable users get a great experience. Okay, one of those is this gas station, right? We have launched a gas station where, chains like Worldchain or chains like OP can sponsor transactions for their users, with the view that, these applications or these builders begin scaling to an extent where they don't need to sponsor anymore. They can sponsor themselves because they found PMS, they have scaled, and they can actually begin, sponsoring the user transactions themselves because the gas price is low, for example, right? That is one example of a solution that we've implemented, i.e. the gas station that uses 457, a way to abstract gas costs from the user. We also have launched passkeys. So a new way of authenticating and creating keys using passkey standards. And we're also working on new recovery solutions as well. So users and builders can choose from a variety of different recovery solutions, right? So they can choose whether they want to recover their solution via, a ZK-powered email, for example, or whether they want to choose a centralized party to just handle all the recovery for them, right? Of course, there's a trade-off of that, but we'll offer both decentralized and decentralized solutions when it comes to recovery for anyone building, and we will launch that on Worldchain as well. So currently we're auditing that at this point in time. So yeah, gas station, passkeys, recovery, these are all topics that we're working on. And we also have we've launched a new, we've recently supported ERC 7579, which is a module standard co-developed by Zero Dev and Rhinestone. And that is just a module standard that gives access to builders to a variety of different modules, different recovery modules, different authentication modules, different ways essentially to give access to the account. And right now, the builders can choose from 20 different modules right now based on this standard that is audited and secure. And yeah, we just want to give those to the builders, and we want to show them what the power of smart accounts can unlock.
All right, excellent. Yeah, great background. We love working with Safe, and under this heading of, kind of what's coming next for Worldchain on our march to mainnet. We're already working with your teams at Safe. Again, as John mentioned, we've mentioned a few times, every verified World ID user that we have, which is over 6 million now, has a Safe associated with it. So we're in process of getting those Safes deployed on Worldchain in preparation for the migration of World App over to Worldchain. So that work is in progress right now. Appreciate all the help from the great people you have working there too, John. And then, so we're, a big one for us clearly is we're launching Worldchain for a variety of reasons, but one of those is to be a new home for World App and World ID. So we're in the process of migrating World App to Worldchain. We did something very similar conceptually when we migrated from Polygon to Optimism mainnet last year. So it's kind of the same playbook, a little bit different, of course. And now that the chain is up and active and some key partners are already beginning to integrate there, we can look tangibly at plans to get it. Yeah, in terms of World App, we got over 10 million World App downloads globally, and we've done over 100 million transactions on World App already. Yeah, it sounds like my audio may be breaking up again, so I apologize for that. But yeah, so as I was saying, if it didn't come through, a lot of World App downloads, over 10 million globally and 100 million transactions so far. In terms of the chain itself, like what is coming next from technology perspective, we'll launch as a stage 1 chain. Stage 1 chain, that terminology basically means with the OP fault-proof system that they announced a few weeks back now, that's a stage 1. It's called a stage 1 decentralization step. And so Worldchain will launch as a stage 1 chain as well, just supporting, which means we support the fault-proof system day 1 out of the gate. So we'll be stage 1 on that. Remco mentioned RETH. We have a huge interest in RETH, and we're already doing some work on RETH to help test. We're working with the Optimism teams to do some testing of RETH. We'll be working on like a multi-client execution framework for the test suite. And then also committing resources directly to RETH to help move that forward. RETH 1.0 was just announced recently. The RETH 1.1 version, if I understand correctly, will be the official OP RETH version. And then I know there's some thought and work around having a RETH-based fault-proof system game dispute participant. That's a mouthful, but it basically means multiple participants in the fault-proof system so that there can be a comparison by a block analyzed by Geth and one analyzed by RETH. And then you've got like a couple of different views of a block and different execution clients to determine if there is a challenge, then perhaps where the transaction in question might be. So, so there's a few things for the chain itself coming up. So Remco, anything you want to add about maybe other projects you know about that might be building on Worldchain by chance?
I actually want to add it was a little bit more color to Safe, because picking account abstraction was like not an obvious decision. And we were like kind of reluctant to make it because it would add extra gas overhead to every transaction and so on. But it's like the single most decision that paid off way, way, way better than we ever expected. Because like literally Safe just saved our ass like a couple of times. Like we're doing the migration from Polygon to Optimism mainnet. It allowed us to just have our users only sign a single transaction to move over all their balances, which was amazing. And then we launched on OP mainnet and realized that, oh shit, we're going to have a serious gas consumption problem really soon. we were able to write these really aggressive batching and compression engines that took many transactions, used a very fancy compression scheme to reduce the call data, and then submitted them to a contract that decompressed them, which is something we just roll up on top of these account abstracted safes. And now when we were planning, like, hey, we're now going to build our own chain, forget about like superchain and homogeneous block-based program. Let's say we want to rewrite consensus rules. What would the ideal WorldCoin consensus rules look like? And as we started brainstorming, we just realized that every single thing we were thinking of, we could also like implement using account abstraction. So I just want to highlight how powerful and like how good of a payoff that was actually. I think the original intent actually was that we wanted to do it because it would allow us to subsidize transaction fees and give users on existing chains already experience of what it would look like after we've really solved the L2 scaling problem. But anyway, yeah, that's just a good example of existing infrastructure that we just want to have like with us on our chain, and others, things around the DeFi ecosystem we want, but also just compatibility with all the existing tooling like Foundry, Etherscan, RPC providers, you name it. So obviously excited about all those projects working on WorldChain, but I'm also excited about a lot of the younger projects, especially the ones rolling out of the hackathons that really hone into this concept of having strong civil protection on a chain and having like real human beings on a chain.
All right, excellent. And Vivian, you want to tell us what's coming up this summer for Optimism?
Yeah, lots of things happening. Most excited about WorldChain getting to mainnet, launching at the stage 1 chain, as you guys mentioned. Aside from that, a couple other things going on in Optimism world. So we have Superfest, which just kicked off this week. That's going to run through the rest of summer. And that's intended to stimulate DeFi activity on the Superchain. We have retro funding, several rounds of that upcoming. One for building up impactful things for the OP stack, also for governance, and then another one for dev tooling later in the year. Season 6 of governance is kicking off, and we're expanding the grants council to include Superchain grants. So not just apps building on OP mainnet, but grants for OP stat chains that want to run their own grants programs. And then last, but certainly not least, we talked about interop for a couple of times in the spaces, but this is the real thing that's happening. We've been building out in the open. So check out our Discord if you're interested in learning more about that. I'm expecting to shift that later this year. So you're going to be able to see the 5 million, hopefully many more verified users on WorldChain being able to interact seamlessly with other networks in the Superchain. So yeah, lots going on.
All right, very good. And that kind of brings us to the end of everything we wanted to chat about. And so just already, so I'll go and we'll get the right person to answer them. The first one actually is multiple questions in one, but they're all related. So I'll just read it as it was written. How the scalability will be texted at WorldChain. Can we expect GameFi projects? And what can we expect about the projects that won grants from Wave 1? I'll let Remco answer that. For clarification on what Wave 1 is referring to is the Worldcoin Foundation has a grants program. And so they've had Wave 0, which was an initial grant set-aside fund for grants and grant recipients. And then they announced Wave 1 and then had that. But Remco, you want to take that question?
Oh, yeah, there's a lot in here. What can we expect for scalability? Well, obviously, it's one of the main motivations for doing WorldChain. So we're going to be pushing hard for this and make sure that this chain grows at least as fast as the users grow. GameFi projects, that's an interesting question. We have 4844 now, so we have transaction fees that get into the territory where you can do it like recreationally. I think there's still some narrative out there that the games belong on L3s. I'm not sure about that. I think right now might be the time to actually experiment with games on L2. Now, why would you do WorldChain for this? A lot of these early game projects were bottlenecked by lack of proper civil protection. If you're creating a game, then you have some sort of in-game economy, and they tend to be, you want them to be fun, but fun does not necessarily lead to civil resistant economies. So having like an external mechanism for that will be incredibly powerful. What can we expect from the projects from Wave 1? Oh, a lot. There's some good ones in there. I think, yeah, the ones that I personally work with are the ones that are working on some deep fundamental tech relating to the uniqueness service and relating to some stuff around zero knowledge identity that we haven't really talked about probably yet. So we'll probably talk about that more. But yeah, exciting stuff
Okay.
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm super impressed by both waves of
Yeah.
grants so far and looking forward to those in the future. And a lot of those we're already being integrated into, the appropriate place, kind of in the Worldcoin tech tree, which is kind of our name for the whole footprint, essentially. So next question says, team, can you share the link to request World ID for an integration for third-party software? I'll refer you to worldcoin.org is the website, and then the /world-ID. So that's worldcoin.org/world-ID. And if you scroll there's a lot of great information there. Read all that. That's just kind of our World ID landing page. But if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a bright heading that says Start Building with World ID. And there kind of walks you through how to integrate. So that's the doc site. And then also there's a Worldcoin partner form. Depending on what your interest is, you can fill out a form and then someone will follow up with you on that. Yeah, I think that's all of our questions. Yeah. So first of all, I want to thank everyone that joined today, everyone live, and then those that might listen to the recording a bit later. I also want to thank, huge shout out to Remco, to John and Vivian for joining us on the space.